Let's go!
Chyba.
Ojej. Pierwsza 22.
No, to co, podobnie.
Average Umineko.
Nie mów tak nawet Bloom, bo się zabije na waszych oczach.
A, tam przesadzasz. Dobra, zaczynamy. All that could be heard was the sound of the rain, the voices from the kids' TV program Maria was watching, and the engrossed Maria's cackling voice. In other words, what greeted them as they returned dumbfounded from that horrible, bizarre scene was the voice of Maria as she rolled around laughing at the TV. Ciekawe, co zrobi, jak się dowie, co się stało.
Że jej matka nie żyje.
Those who returned to the room didn't know how to explain to Maria that her mother was dead, and were trapped by a suffocating silence. At first, Maria returned their stares with a dubious look, but when she realized that they weren't trying to blame her for anything, she ignored them again and again immersed herself in the TV program. The children wordlessly sat down heavily on the sofa. Their minds were probably blank from their state of shock. Everyone had already cried and mourned so much, but now they just vaguely sat there, their faces seeming to have lost all emotion. Only Cannon had returned to his usual calm expression. However, that probably didn't mean he'd been able to wipe out the shock. Nothing was reflected in his eyes as he stared into empty space. Hideyoshi kept on fidgeting, and every time he remembered that horrible scene, he started muttering about how he couldn't believe it, how it couldn't have been something from this world, how it must have been the work of demons. Every now and then, his mutterings produced a question directed at Nanjo, but the latter kept repeating in a calm, doctor-like manner that nothing could be understood by only glancing at the scene, and that until the police arrived, they wouldn't learn anything. However, Nanjo only appeared calm next to Hideyoshi, who simply couldn't suppress his agitation and fear. In fact, Nanjo had also received a huge shock, and his face was deathly pale. Maybe the atmosphere was why she tried to rise to the challenge and take charge. Natsuki appeared to be unchanged from her normal attitude, and she briskly gave directions.
Jezu, sorry, but... Nieważne. I will go see father. Genji quickly contact the police.
Certainly.
I wonder if you would allow me to tag along Natsuki-san, since Kraus Nissan is... No god! The Maria obok siedzi! The task of aiding father has been left to me.
To jest dosłownie jak chcesz coś zawodu?
Jakby ona do niej tak mówi, a dosłownie jej mąż zmarł.
Niesamowite.
It would be improper of me to relax here while relying entirely on you. Ona ma taki zły wyraz twarzy.
Ona się ewidentnie cieszy z tej sytuacji.
A,
Ona się cieszy, że jej
ewidentnie.
brat zmarł i że się znęca nad jego żoną. Ewa ma
No
takie nie
cóż.
po kolei w głowę.
Natsuki was struck speechless by Eva's aggressive move in a situation like this. She seemed to be claiming that, while if Kraut's dead, the one to take responsibility shouldn't be his wife, but herself, the next highly ranked in the family.
Wow.
Or maybe she hadn't been at all happy when Natsuki took command without reference to her in such an extreme situation. However, even Eva's mind had been blank from shock until a moment ago. She only came to her senses after Natsuki started giving orders.
Just do as you like.
Natsuki started walking without saying a word more. Eva followed behind her. As they did, Kumasawa ran into the parlor. A tak, ona też tam była. She usually wasn't the kind of person to run around, so under normal conditions, most people would have taken her entrance as a sign that something was the matter. But because everyone was still stricken with shock, they hardly even noticed her.
Madame, if you're looking for Natsuki Nesan, she went to see father. She probably back soon. What happened, Kumasawa-san? In the dining hall.
In the dining
Blood!
hall.
Blood!
Whoa.
Everyone thought the same thing. I hope I misheard that. Any container can only hold so much, and no one here would be capable of handling yet another tragedy. So they all fought it. I hope I misheard that.
What happened? In the dining hall? When I went to the dining hall to set up for breakfast.
Bro
The first
umiera.
one to start running was George. His harsh footsteps jogged Hideyoshi and Nanji to their senses, and they chased after him. Balor and the others followed. They flew into the dining hall one after another, but they didn't find any change that might have caused Kumasawa to go pale. For those who had viewed that gruesome scene in the storehouse, it was a bit of an anticlimax.
Bro.
Nic się nie stało, co to ma być? However, Kumasawa, who had followed them, pointed it out. There really were some traces of blood remaining on the floor. Compared to that terrible scene, it wasn't very impressive.
Boring.
However, if you calmly thought about it, this definitely indicated the loss of a lot of blood.
There's another puddle of blood over here. What in the world?
It appears that a great deal of time has passed. It's probably safe to say that they were killed here last night. It definitely looks that way. We are talking together in the dining hall until late into the night, and after that, someone must have forced their way in.
Dad, when did you and Mom slip out of the meeting and go to sleep?
It was a little past midnight. So we should probably assume it happened after that. Are you kidding me? Give me a break.
Lady, please stay strong.
Stay strong, strongly.
After seeing that hell on earth in the storehouse, this is nothing.
Really? Good for you. I feel like my head's gonna explode. This is the dining hall, right? Every day, this is where I'd eat, complain about school, complain about homework, talk to my dad about my grades. That's what
Ona
this
nie
place
jest
is to me.
strongly.
Lady, it wouldn't be good to remain here any longer. Let's return to the parlor.
I agree. Uncle Hideyoshi, I think that this room will be really important to the police. Don't you think it'd be bad if we trampled all over it? Butler proposed this in a slightly firm voice as, along with Cannon, he grabbed the pale and shaking Jessica's shoulders.
Everything is just as Butler-san has said. There is nothing more to be gained from remaining in this room.
Nanji spoke while looking at everyone's pale faces. Even though that horrible scene in the storehouse felt like something not of this world, at least then we'd be able to leave, cut ourselves off from that place and run away. Everyone had shared in that feeling. However, this dining hall was different. It was in the mansion, the main building on this estate, and as Jessica had said, it should have been one of the most calming places even inside the mansion. It was where all of the relatives had eaten lunch and dinner yesterday. The shock of seeing this place smeared with blood reminded us of that horrible spectacle in the storehouse, and forced us to accept that we hadn't really been able to run away from the scene of that tragedy. Lady,
I agree too. The culprit might have left traces in this room. Amateurs like us shouldn't stir the place up. Let's leave quickly. Quickly, quickly!
Hideyoshi also understood the meaning of what Butler had said, and pushed everyone to hurry out of the dining hall. The way we were then, looking at that blood any longer would have been too harsh. Nobody went against his words. Everyone raced each other out of the dining hall. It was almost as though the last person in the room would be trapped in there, all alone. Once in the hallway, we lent a hand to Kumasawa, who was still trembling and leaning against the wall, and we all headed back to the parlor together. Then Genji returned.
Oh, Genji-san, were you able to contact the police?
As to that, I'm afraid I must apologize. I don't know if it was a failure of the radio or something else that caused it, but
What the? So you couldn't contact the police? Both the phone and the radio?
my apologies. A boat will be arriving on Monday morning, and I believe we will be able to borrow their communications equipment.
Isn't there a boat on this island? Can't we just take a little trip to the Nijima Police Department? Hideyoshi-san, that would be impossible with this weather. At the very least, we can't do anything until the typhoon passes us by.
Kraus-sama's boat is being repaired, and is not on the island. Therefore, we must wait for the boat coming on Monday.
How could it happen? 6 people are dead! The phones and the radio aren't working, and there's no boat! So, until the typhoon passes and the boat comes, in other words, until tomorrow morning, we're gonna be stuck here on this island, unable to contact the police, aren't we?
Which means that, not just us, but the criminal who killed everyone is also confined to this island.
That certainly follows. The culprit who killed everyone is still here on the island.
So the bastard who killed Dad and the others must still be hiding somewhere, unable to escape. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it! I'll catch that bastard, no way, I'll hand him over to the police! I slice him up to the bits myself!
Uuu. A, bo oni przyjęli tak się darli, że...
Maria had fine.
Tak.
Mhm.
Boże!
Nie było, były kropki. No dobrze. Maria had finally realized that something odd was happening in the parlor. Rather than noticing something odd, it was probably better to say she felt unhappy and neglected, since everyone was getting so excited about something only she didn't know about.
Uuu. Jessica, Oneta, did someone die?
Uh-oh.
The way she spoke was completely calm, just as though she was talking about someone who had appeared on a television drama, as though it was someone else's problem. Jessica probably didn't like that.
No, she...
As though, as though trying to say, "Can't you tell just by looking at me, overwhelmed with grief?" She flared up at Maria.
They all died. Everyone. My dad and mother's parents. Golden Sun and Shannon. And even your mother too!
Jezu, ona jest głupia.
Just
Stop it, Jessica
W
Chan.
końcu by się dowiedziała.
You aren't the only one who's sad.
Maria-san, I know this will come as a shock. But please listen. Your mother has died.
Mama died? Uuu.
Ale jaka
Aha,
reakcja.
spoko.
Spoko.
Ooh. Yeah, sad to kill her. I know
Yeah.
it's sad, but stay strong.
Jezu, Jessica be
Nie.
like, not strongly, Maria, the strongest, dosłownie. How many people died?
6 people.
Maria, the strongest.
6 people. Damn it, damn it, damn it. How could anyone say something that cruel? There's a limit to how
Mają być 2 stoły.
there's a limit to how cruel you can be, even if you're a human. I don't know who it is, but the culprit isn't a human. There's no way their blood is red.
Ale,
To ile stołów?
a nic, mama się... Uuu! The culprit isn't human. It's just the chosen by the
By the
dupa, tam chyba jest napisane, nie wiem, co innego mogłoby się zmieścić.
chosen by the
Tak.
Huh. But hey, Maria, did you say something just now? Maria had just said something, but since the words were so remotely separated from the flow and context of the conversation, I couldn't understand them for a second. When I tried to ask her to repeat it again, I was shocked by the sudden sound of Aunt Natsuhi's loud voice coming from the entrance to the parlor. It looked like Aunt Natsuhi and Aunt Eva had returned from their trip to see grandfather.
You can't contact them, even with the radio. If we can't use it at the time like this, why do we even have an emergency radio?
My
Good point.
apologies. It was supposed to have a maintenance inspection every year.
Wait, don't you have one of those boat signaling devices that makes a flashing light? Couldn't you use that to contact the next island?
We do not have such equipment.
Boże, jaki biedaki.
My sincere apologies.
Wstyd.
Żałosne.
Just then, Kumasawa arrived, pushing a serving cart loaded with breakfast. Since there was no way we'd be able to eat in the dining hall, Hideyoshi had ordered her to take it to the parlor.
Why are we eating breakfast here? Good point.
Natsuhi-san, I'll take it later.
A, bo
More
ona nie wie.
Eva, how is father? Judging by the fact that he's not with you, it seems he will not leave his room. Not even for a situation like this.
Sigma. He wasn't there. The room was empty. What?
What he? Where could he have gone in a time like this?
Do you mean to say the master has left his study?
Poszedł do kibla. That is correct. I was surprised myself. I wonder when he left his room. Jezu, człowiek nie może usiąść na kiblu nawet w spokoju.
Yeah, exactly.
Do any of you have an idea? Nie wiem, sprawdź w kiblu.
No nie wiem, dziwni są. Natsuhi looked at Kenji and Kanon as she said this. Maybe she was trying to ask whether the servants who served directly under the one-winged eagle knew of a place he might go. However, it was probably the other way around. Their faces made it clear that those who knew Kinzo best realized even more than the rest how impossible it was for him to leave his room.
Even we have no idea.
As you all know, within that study, the master had everything, from a place to sleep to a bathroom. I couldn't imagine him leaving that room except for a significant reason.
On miał kibel w pokoju?
Tak.
Wow.
In that case,
Wonder.
what? Isn't it natural to assume that one of those significant reasons came up?
We still cannot be certain that that's the case. Anyway, he is a fickle person, so it's possible he went for a walk by himself, unaware of the current situation. If that is the case, then we must act in all haste to tell him what has happened and ask for instructions. That's right. Although I don't want to think about it, it's possible something had happened to him, isn't it? I'd rather not even consider such a sinister possibility. Bro, Ewa to jest taka, ona kocha
No one
dramę.
had.
Ona żyje dla dramy.
No one had seen Kinzo since the discovery of those 6 terrible corpses. On top of that, the phones were broken, the radio wouldn't reach anyone, and there was no way to contact the police. Apparently, the typhoon would leave tomorrow and a boat would come. But until then, no one could rely on anyone outside the island, nor could they escape the island. The tragedy had hit everyone so abruptly that they'd lost all their composure. Everyone felt a heavy silence. Everyone was impatient. Even though they needed to do something, they couldn't think of anything. So some of them held their heads in their arms while others got irritated. Right now, no one could explain what was occurring on this island, Rokkenjima. After that, we ate the breakfast Kumasawa-san had made, which felt dry and tasteless. Of course, this was right after something like that bad had happened. No one felt particularly hungry. However, we understood logically that not eating would weaken our bodies. It would also be rude to Kumasawa-san, who had made the breakfast. Kumasawa-san had taken some unusual western vegetables, ones that Goda-san had probably ordered for his ultra-elaborate meals, and cooked them in the Japanese style, which made them turn an unpleasant color. As to what Goda-san had been planning to cook with those ingredients, right then I couldn't even imagine it. If I did think about it, I'd be reminded of the way Goda-san died, and a sour taste would fill the inside of my mouth. Everyone planned to eat for the time being, but of course no one made much progress. Then we began pulling our knowledge of our current situation. First off, 6 people, which included Uncle Kraus, my dad, Kirie-san, Aunt Rosa, Goda-san and Shannon-chan, had been found in the Rose Garden storehouse as brutally mutilated corpses. And yet we still couldn't handle contact the police, since both the phones and the radio were unusable. So until the typhoon passed, there was nothing we could do. Furthermore, grandfather, who might have hoped would be able to show a little leadership in this kind of a situation, had disappeared some time ago. Goda-san hadn't made breakfast, so grandfather's stomach must have been empty. And if he had been just taking a casual walk, we would have been able to hear him whining about how angry and hungry he was by now. And by that, he hadn't appeared. There was more than a small chance that he'd gotten caught up in this crime. According to my aunts, on their way back from Kinzo's study, they'd searched for him, calling out on every floor, but were unable to find him. Considering the timing of it all, it's only reasonable to assume that his disappearance had something to do with the crime. We figured that and the rest were probably killed in the dining hall and then painstakingly moved to the storehouse, so maybe grandfather had has already been killed, and dragged to some strange place which we simply haven't discovered yet. No one actually said it out loud, but this theory seems extremely convincing.
A, teraz ja. We will go check
Mhm.
that all of the windows and doors are locked. We must also conduct a thorough search for father. The children must remain in this room. Iwa-san and Hideyoshi-san, I'm sorry, but please stay here with the children. I'd like to ask you the same, Dr. Nanjo.
I understand. I will wait here.
Aunt Natsuki followed the servants, Genji-san, Kumasawa-san, and Kanon-kun out of the parlor.
Umrą.
All that was left was Aunt Eva, Uncle Hideyoshi, Dr. Nanjo, and the four of us children, a total of 7 people.
Ona sama poszła?
Nie!
Chyba. Nie wiem.
Ona nie poszła tam z tym kanon i...
A, dobra. Sorry, myślałam, że jest debilką przez chwilę. Let's all stick together and maybe watch some television while we wait. Though I doubt we'll find anything good in the middle of the day on Sunday.
Uncle Hideyoshi started acting cheerfully, trying to brighten up this gloomy atmosphere.
Ooh, good show. Watch it, watch it. Ooh.
Oh, really? You wanna watch TV, Mario-san?
Jezu, matka jej
Rodzice?
umarła.
So come and watch it with your
No, ona
aunt.
się cieszy.
To jest dziecko, któremu matka umarła przed chwilą.
Może nie lubiłam.
No cóż. Może.
No ale to jest
Maybe.
niesamowite.
Maria was the only one who joined in. Even though Maria had been told of her mother's death, she didn't show the slightest flicker in her emotions. Was it really normal for a 9-year-old girl like Maria to act so much like a very young child?
Może do niej nie dociera.
Everyone else's mood. Everyone else's mood failed to improve, and they each sank absent-mindedly into their sofas. Aniki, can I ask you something?
What is it?
Just now in the storehouse, you said something about Shannon-chan and a ring. Did you give that to her?
Tu, 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 ru.
Georgianity didn't answer, but he hung his head
Tego
and
pytanie, jakie
closed
mógł
his
zadać
eyes.
chyba.
Niemiłe.
I mean, dosłownie umarła.
Spalił jej z
narzeczona.
butler. There could be no clear response.
Quit it, Battler. Figure it out yourself.
You're right. I shouldn't have asked.
That's right. It was me. Last night, I proposed to her. That was when I gave her the ring. I told her that tomorrow she should put it on whatever finger she wanted as her answer. I guess it was a pretty pretentious thing to say.
And that ring had been on the ring finger of Shannon-chan's left hand.
Well, several years ago, Shannon came to me asking for advice. About you, George Nathan.
I wonder what she could have said.
Shannon was always really bad at lying. It was obvious pretty quickly that you were the one that she was talking about. She asked whether it'd be okay for her to get close to someone, even though she was only a servant. She asked about what kinds of things boys like, what kind of clothes she should wear to make them happy, lots of stuff like that.
Well, I guess you could say I felt envious hearing her say that. So then she was given an engagement ring, and all ended right there.
I know people value things differently, but being proposed to by a man, well, it can be the high point of your life. So I'm sure. Last night, I'm sure Shannon was happy. From the bottom of her heart. Happier than she's ever been since the day of her birth.
George
Hmm.
Aniki sighed deeply without raising his head. Or maybe tears had risen to his eyes.
It seems Shannon was on duty in the guest house last night. But because she was too embarrassed to go back to the guest house with me, she went over to the mansion.
Think about how Shannon must have felt. When you receive an engagement ring, then no matter how much warning you've been given beforehand, it's perfectly normal to get so excited that your mind goes blank. She must have been incredibly embarrassed.
And then Shannon went to the mansion, even though she hadn't been assigned there, helped Goda-san with his work, and got caught up in this crime. If only I hadn't given her that ring on that day, in that place,
Yeah, George.
Shannon wouldn't have, Saya wouldn't have been caught up in that crime.
Mhm.
No!
Jezu, biedny George.
Aniki, that's the one place where you're wrong. It's definitely wrong. So don't cry anymore.
Ah,
Ooh,
Whoa.
Butler-kun, let's leave him be.
After Antiva said that, I stopped talking to him. Misplaced words of comfort might actually do more harm than good. Jessica sat down next to Annika and put an arm around him. Maybe only Jessica, who had known about Annika and Shannon's love since the beginning, and who had even discussed that relationship with Shannon, could confront Aniki now. I went over to Aunt Eva and sat down in the opposite sofa.
Butler-kun, you really are strong. It looks like you've kept a good hold on yourself.
Well, look. The depth of the love becomes the depth of the wound, right? After all, it's not like how that old bastard died had anything to do with me. I feel bad about Kirya-san, but, well, she wasn't actually my parent.
My, if that's so, you certainly were crying a lot back then.
Well, I think at least that much crying was due as gratitude to the parent who raised me.
The speed of that changeover and that dry tone must come from Rudolph. That kid would always get violently happy, sad, and angry, but he'd always regain his cool immediately afterwards.
It's nothing like that. I haven't really been able to get over the shock yet. I think the only difference between me and everyone else is the kind of emotions it stirred in me.
What do you mean?
I've been acting much calmer than George, Annika, and Jessica. That wasn't because my sadness was any less intense or because I already recovered. My sadness was also simply getting replaced gradually with a different emotion. Rather than sad, I'd say I'm more pissed off. What bastard did this and where? It's kind of been eating at me that I didn't get a chance to smack him upside the face. That was what I really wanted to do. I couldn't forgive myself if I just sat there overwhelmed with sadness and hugging my knees. Since the time Dad and the others were killed, this island had been covered by the typhoon, which means the bastard responsible for all this is still somewhere on this island.
Yes, that would seem to be the case. I wonder if they're hiding somewhere in the dark forest even now.
I felt like I'd had a very similar conversation with Kiryu-san the night before. That's right. And the letter from the person claiming to be Beatrice appeared at the dinner table last night. We talked about whether or not a 19th person actually exists. And Eva, do you think this murder has anything to do with the letter from Beatrice last night?
That one, well, I wonder. All of the siblings agreed that the mysterious letter was sent to further complicate the problem of father's inheritance. As to whether that and the case this morning are related, it's impossible to tell at this stage.
Was that letter really given to Maria by someone
Przetwu
called
na
Beatrice?
sekundę.
Mhm. No to ja w sumie też jakieś picie sobie wezmę.
No przecież muszę taki robić.
To co śpiewamy?
Śpiewamy? Nie wiem.
Nie wiem, mi się śniło w ogóle, że byliśmy gdzieś razem w jakimś barze czy coś i nie wiem dlaczego śpiewaliśmy i ja śpiewałam Nie będę Julią i jak się obudziłam, to
jestem.
miałam tą piosenkę w głowie.
Ale mama
Ciekawe.
mnie wołała.
Napiszę na serniku później. Bro. Wszyscy chyba są? Czy... Aha.
Nie.
Nie, dobra, widzę.
Coś, nie wiem. A, bo
Widzę,
tego nie ma
że
Hobusaka.
wyciszą się.
No właśnie. To czekamy.
Mamo poszedł,
radzisz?
powiedziałam, że dosłownie sekundę mnie nie będzie.
Skorzystał z okazji. Popicie
No,
poszedł.
okej.
Underestimated your power po prostu.
A, przesunęło się, dobrze.
A to ja też idę po picie w takim razie.
Jezu.
Wróciłem.
No.
Dlaczego wiedziałem,
no
że
super,
tak będzie?
idealny moment, no.
No ja nie mogę. Nie, bo chlebek przyszła
Akurat
i
jak ty
poszła.
wróciłeś, to chlebek poszło.
No to nieźle.
2 sekundy różnicy.
No cóż. Dosłownie.
I to będzie straszne, to zgaszę światło i będzie fajnie.
No mi się już świeczki wypaliły niestety.
No, zapala świeczki w pokoju.
Co? Ładnie pachną.
Nie, ja też mam zapachane.
Ci nie
Ja sobie
pasuje.
rozjebałam komin.
Halo.
No właśnie.
Halo.
Halo.
Dobra, lecimy dalej.
Możemy lecieć dalej. Możesz ten.
How could it be? All of it was a farce devised by father, wasn't it? He made Shannon-chan or someone wear the dress from the portrait and trick Maria-chan, right? Isn't that just the kind of overly intricate prank father would pull?
Last night I talked with Kiryu-san about whether Beatrice actually exists. And Kiryu-san also said that Beatrice was probably one of the 18 of us.
Isn't that obvious? There's no one else on this island beside us, right? Then there must be someone among us, who's pretending to be Beatrice. What?
Dun, 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 dun. O. Co jest?
Teraz
Tekst
twoja
niby
kwestia.
jest teraz, czy co? Bo... bo
no.
mi się nie załadowało
No.
dalej przez ten głupi deszcz. A,
Imersja.
imersja.
Tak.
No przecież słońce jest na zewnątrz.
Deszcz w grze ci zakłóca internet w życiu.
Dosłownie. Dosłownie. To nawet nie jest żart.
Internet z ziemniaka.
Dalej mam kwestię Ewy. No. O! Jest Butler. Pokazuje mi Butlera. O. There is no one else but us on this island. Dalej nie widzę.
Nie pięknie.
Niesamowite.
Jest
Dlaczego nie
Naprawdę
możesz się
wspaniałe.
wyłączyć efektu?
Dobra, skipuję kwestię.
Po prostu
Nie było tam nic ważnego.
Aha. A, no.
Obviously
teraz mi
right.
załadowało, co?
Are you
Nic?
saying there could be someone else here other than us? No one is on the island except us. There are only 18 people. Oh my god. So the one pretending to be
No.
Beatrice has to be one of those 18.
Ma 18.
No way.
Teraz już nie ma deszczu, który by ci to zakłócał.
Nie ma?
Ale może
Powiadasz.
jeszcze ten poprzedni deszcz mu się ładuje.
Czekaj, odłączę się pod streama i podłączę. O, może teraz. O, jest super! Jest, dobrze, widzę tekst. Clear denied the existence of a 19th person by spinning the chessboard around. Although Aunt Eva hadn't constructed an argument that complicated, her opinion at least was the same. Except, if that's the case, our situation starts to look very ugly. At the time of Beatrice's letter, the whole thing could be passed off as a prank set up by someone or another. However, if we're assuming that there's no 19th person, we can't ignore this anymore. In other words, if there's no 19th person, then who's the culprit who killed Dad and the others is also one of the 18, right? So in other words, the person who killed them is one of the people inside this very mansion right now. Ale smutna twarz. Aunt Eva smiled meaningfully.
Przecież
It
słyszałam
looked like she
smell.
thought this conclusion. It looked like she thought this conclusion should have been obvious from the very beginning.
The culprit carried the bodies of those 6 into the storehouse, but even that was an impressive feat, don't you think? That shutter is always closed and locked, right? In other words, in order to carry them into the storehouse, the culprit would need to unlock the shutter. Understand?
It is possible the shutter was left open by mistake that day?
The servant said it's always kept locked. In other words, unless the culprit took the keys from the servant room, there's no way they could open the storehouse.
I wonder if the key in the servant room was the only one.
Genji-san said that was the case, which meant the culprit knew where that single key was kept and took it. Simply as that. Just now I watched when Canon-kun returned the key to the servant room. The wall was packed with keys, and I don't think a novice would know where or what those keys went to. The culprit was miraculously able to find the storehouse key among all of those. Furthermore, even though the key didn't have a tag or something sticking to it, they knew it was the key to the storehouse behind the rose garden. And that means they also knew where the storehouse was. Wow. I'll say it even clearer.
Wow.
The culprit know the inside of the servant room well. Albo użył swoich mięśni i otworzył siłą drzwi.
O, to Karol na pewno.
Bardzo możliwe. Na pewno. Her argument was extremely plain and clear. If the bodies had been found thrown somewhere in the bushes of the rose garden, there wouldn't have been much to go on. However, if there was only one key to the storehouse in the servant room, and it was stored with such a large group of keys, a novice would not be able to tell them apart. This meant the culprit was someone who went into the servant room a lot and was familiar with the locations of the keys. The family members didn't normally go into the servant room, which meant that one of the servants is the culprit.
I'm sorry, but even your auntie can't say any more than that. However, I will tell you one thing.
What's that?
Whoa! It's reasonable to think that the culprits are multiple in numbers and fairly well armed. They have to be, wouldn't they? They had to assault the four in the dining hall and kill them. Drag a total of 6 bodies all the way to the storehouse beyond the rose garden and arrange for that disgusting makeup and the graffiti on the shutter. There's no way that a single culprit could carry out all of that on their own, right?
It made sense. It probably wouldn't have been possible for a single person with enough time, but it would take so incredibly long. It was probably safe to assume that a significant number of people were involved. Whew. So what you mean is that maybe all of the servants were in cahoots.
Please keep it quiet, okay? It wouldn't be right to voice mere speculations like this. And if it really is true, what would you do next? They might not let us leave here alive. This is an opponent who had no trouble killing Nissan and the 3 others. Right now, the only one I can count on to fight with me are the 3 in my family and maybe you, which counts a total of 4 people, right? We're no better off than they were last night. In short, it'd be easy for the culprits to massacre the rest of us. Oh.
I'd be playing detective with Aunt Eva, trying to expose the person who had killed Dad and the rest before the police did. If only I could cleverly penetrate the culprit's identity and stick the proof in their face. I'd been so sure that, just like in one of those detective movies, the culprit would then give up and surrender. However, the culprit would only surrender if there was no way for them to fight back. Culprits behind the crime on this island were far from helpless, and might even be able to massacre all the remaining people here. On top of that, the island was like a giant closed room, cut off from the outside world by the typhoon. So they had a full day, until tomorrow, to kill, scheme, and camouflage themselves. In short, it wasn't a safe atmosphere where we could have get very far by playing detective. To the contrary, we were at the stage where we had to be scared stiff, since playing detective might displease the culprits and cause them to commit another mass murder.
Well, it is just a possibility, right? But I can't bring myself to trust the servants yet. And that doesn't mean I only suspect them. don't you think there might be some mastermind behind all of this?
A mastermind? Why do you say that?
Golda chyba nie żyje.
No właśnie,
Just
Golda nie
a
żyje.
feeling. Think about what think about what the word servant literally means. It means someone who serves as someone else's arm and legs. Right? It was a bunch of Ushiromiya family members who got killed, so naturally there must be someone involved who stands to gain from the result.
O, ty szmato.
No ale Shannon też
This
umarła.
was also plain. No, Shannon też umarła. Chcę wszystko zrzucić na Natsuki. Proste. This was also plain and clear. The Ushiromiya family had been right in the middle of discussions of how to distribute the inheritance when grandfather died. If these days followed the standard form of any classic mystery novel, the crime was definitely caused by someone with ties to the Ushiromiya family and who was involved in the inheritance problem. Aunt Eva has probably read a few books in that genre herself.
Ona czytała Agatha Christie.
Her argument may have had a few blind assumptions in it, but it was a standard conclusion that anyone might have reached. I think most people would end up suspecting the servants, even if they use different reasoning to get there. Especially the story about the key to the shutter, that made it very easy to suspect that one of the servants was involved. And that's why I don't like it.
Ale mu-
Wow. What do you mean you don't like it? Czemu ona taka szczęśliwa?
Nah,
Oboje są
stuck
szczęśliwi.
to myself.
Nie, ale jakby Butler, to nie, on chociaż udawał, że o nie, jest mi przykro, a Ewa to jest po prostu wow, żyje dla dramy, żyje dla fabuły.
I ona ma wyjebane, nikt nie umarł.
Wow, ludzie umarli,
szmatą.
ale się dzieje. W sumie Sigma.
I tried to dodge her question by joking. W sumie. I tried to dodge her question by joking, but I couldn't erase the sense of unease welling up inside me. After all, her conclusion was such an easy one to reach. A conclusion that anyone could reach. And I just couldn't be satisfied with that. If I tried spinning the chessboard around, like I'd learned from Kirie-san, this was exactly why a servant couldn't possibly be the culprit. If the servants really were the culprits, they wouldn't hide the bodies in a place connected to themselves. Why on earth would they use the rose garden shit if they were the ones in charge of the key that could unlock it? The police would probably immediately pursue whoever had been in control of the key. It was even possible that some other facts might have come to light as a result. The more we think of the servants as the culprits, the less reason they had to carry the bodies into the storehouse. But what if they knew we'd think that and put the corpses in the storehouse for that very reason? No, that's completely impossible. When the police come and inspect the scene of the crime, they'll probably be able to uncover many things. No matter how carefully the culprits carry out that murder, some traces will definitely be found. In other words, they had everything to lose and nothing to gain. If you think about it this way, and look at this murder game from the culprit's side, it's hard to imagine why they'd want to call attention to the corpses. Once the corpses were found, it could result in someone sending a report to the police, or it might take the remaining people more cautious, or it might make the survivors start to search for the culprit. None of these things would make life any easier for the culprit. It's just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I read recently called Higurashi no Naku Koro ni.
What?
Wow.
Ja,
Ktoś słyszał o czymś takim?
Nie mogę.
No way. Every story needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Eliminating that beginning is essential for the perfect rhyme. Right now, we don't know where grandfather is. We don't know if he's already become a victim or if he's one of the culprits. But this state of confusion must be beneficial to the killer. The culprit has absolutely nothing to gain by showing us the bodies in such an obvious way and making us all realize that there's been a murder. In fact, this is the perfect place to spin the chessboard around. In other words, showing us the corpses in such a flashy way must be the culprit's goal in and of itself. So, at the very least, to the culprit, the appearance of 6 corpses there meant more than the deaths themselves. In other words, the culprit wanted this murder on display. To whom? To us. This is a message. The culprit is trying to shove everything in our faces. I don't know what it is. At this point in time, this vulgar mass murder isn't making me feel anything except a malice directed towards all of us. Malice towards all of us. What is it? Each one of the survivors has some kind of connection to one of the 6 victims. Uncle Krause's death brought Jessica the grief of losing a family member. The deaths of Kiryu-san and Dad and Kiryu-san brought me sorrow, while Aunt Rose's death brought Mary a sorrow.
Fake news, Mario.
Pewno? Fake news, no właśnie. Ona się cieszy. Goodness probably shocked his fellow servants. And Shan-chan's death brought grief both to George Aniki, who had proposed to her, and Kanon-kun, who had loved her like an older sister. Everyone now on this island has received an equal amount of sadness. Aunt Eva was sure that the servants were in cahoots. But then, how could you explain the deaths of Goda-san and Shannon-chan? At any rate, by this argument, the grief caused by the 6 deaths hit everyone but Uncle Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi. Even Aunt Eva, who had directed suspicion at the servants and acted as though she herself was beyond suspicion, could not be ruled out as a suspect. In the first place, she was able to argue that the servants were suspicious by focusing on the shutter's key. But if you look at it from a perspective of motive and who would gain, Aunt Eva's name rises to the top of the list.
I know what you're thinking, Butler-kun.
Huh? Oh no. Please don't tell anybody. How am I so full of obscene stuff?
I'm the one who's going to gain the most from these murders. Since I'm going to be suspected anyway, I might as well get it out in the open.
I tried to dodge the issue by joking around, but apparently it didn't work.
The inheritance will be divided into as many parts as there are siblings. But right now, I'm the only one of the 4 left. All of the assets of the Ushiromiya family will become mine.
If Uncle Hideyoshi heard you, he'd say, "Could you give it a rest? It's funny."
I'm sorry, I was just fooling around. since I'm going to be suspected anyway, no matter how much I try to smooth it over. That's why, from my point of view, this murder might have been designed to cast suspicion on me. Unfortunately, my alibi for last night is weak.
Could you tell a bit more about last night?
As you know, the discussion between the siblings of how to slice up and eat the inheritance continued until late in the night. But I don't know how it lasted. My husband and I had woken up early that morning. We were so sleepy, and a little past midnight they let us go. We then returned to the guest house and rested there.
Can anyone other than Uncle Hideyoshi prove that? No, it's not like I suspect you or anything, okay?
Oh, are you sure about that? I don't know if it counts as proof, but when we returned to the guest house, we were greeted by Genji-san, who asked if we needed a towel. I think that should be enough to prove we returned to the guest house a little after midnight. Though, if my theory was correct, the servants would all be in cahoots, and that wouldn't actually make for much of an alibi.
Hey, you've got a point there. Because that means I'm playing detective with the real culprit right now, huh?
However, let me say this for my honor's sake. Jezu, jaką minę ma. If I was after the inheritance, I never commit such a bizarre set of murders. Boże, prawo mało.
Na zdrowie.
Kaszlałam, ale dziękuję. After all, if I just wanted to make them forfeit their rights to the inheritance, it wouldn't matter to me how they died. It'd be much smarter of me to try and make their deaths look like accidents. Especially if you're assuming I laid out some careful plan that involved even the servants. Jezu, ona się tłumaczy z tego, że nic nie zrobiła.
You've got a point there. If you're killing someone for personal gain, you definitely shouldn't make it look like a murder.
Exactly. That's why I'm in such a blue mood.
No way.
Blue mood.
Huh?
The police will probably treat me like
Yeah.
a mastermind and investigate all kinds of things. Not fun at all. No shit.
Aunt Eva shrugged with a bitter smile.
Ona mówi o tym, jakby to była taka codzienność. No, policja mnie znowu przeszukuje.
No cóż. It was just as easy to suspect Aunt Eva as it was to suspect the servants. So, if we spin the chessboard around, does that make it impossible for the culprit to be her, suspicious as she is? However, if that sort of argument always works, then motive can never help us in any way. No, that can't be right. Knowing the motive must give us powerful clues towards knowing the culprit. That's why murderers from all time periods disguise crimes in complicated ways, cleverly preventing their motives from being discovered. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Every time I spin the chessboard around, it keeps flipping from front to back and back to front. Are my thoughts bringing me closer to the truth? Or are they... Aunt Eva didn't want to talk any more than that, so I folded my arms and headed to the window to cool my head a little. Proszę nie patrz na deszcz. As I looked over the parlor, I saw George, Aniki, and the others gathered, talking. It looked like they were talking about the magic circle that had been painted onto the shutter. As Uncle Hideyoshi thought back to that time, he started drawing the shape in the margins of Maria's notebook. I see. Since Maria was second only to grandfather in knowledge of the occult, she might understand what it meant.
I think it was probably something like that. There was a mark that looked like a variation of a cross. And then surrounding the circle, all around the perimeter, were these closely packed straight letters on all four sides of the cross. And in four corners, there was something written. I didn't look like the alphabet or something. It didn't look like the alphabet or something like that. It was what they call Asian characters. And around the top of the circumstance, there was a small mark. 5 small circles arranged in a plus sign, and straight lines connecting them. Oh yeah, there definitely was something like that drawn there. Yep, there's no mistaking that shape. I don't understand the thin characters, but the arrangement was nearly the same.
Everyone was staring down at the shape, so I stared down at it too. From what I'd heard, this has been painted on the shutter to the storehouse with some material that looked like blood. Blood. I see. This sure is unsettling.
Grandfather's probably the only one who'd want to draw something this weird. Seriously, where did he go? I want to grab him and ask what the hell is supposed to mean.
Jessica's voice contained impatience and anger. She hadn't gone so far as to say grandfather was the culprit, but she seemed sure that grandfather knew something about the culprit's background. Of course, if you're searching for a link connecting to the Ushiromiya family to the occult, then 10 out of 10 people would think of grandfather. Also, to a person who knew nothing of the occult, the strange mark would have no meaning. Which meant that this might have been something addressed to grandfather. That's right, and the reason the crime was shown to the survivors was so they'd find this. In that case, where had grandfather, the essential recipient of this message, disappeared off to?
Does this shape ring any bells?
Ooh,
She locked in.
Maria looked at the shape with a serious face. Maybe she was enthusiastic because this was her area of expertise. However, her appearance was that of someone separated from the events at hand, as though this thing hadn't been drawn on the shutter closed around her mother's corpse.
My first impression was that the design resembled a German cross.
Halo? Nie było mnie
No.
słychać? A, ja powiedziałam, nie było mnie słychać.
No, okay.
It
nie było.
certainly does have a kind of design. Does that mean it has something to do with Germany? The German cross was originally a crest from a religious order of knights and was supposed to protect pilgrims traveling to sacred places. So, in other words, this magic circle might have some religious meaning. This is starting to sound like gibberish.
No co jest? Dobra, nic ode mnie nie chcą jednak. O,
Oh,
co się dzieje?
o mój Boże.
Co to jest za rybie oko?
Romatik, gdy podniosę kamień do nimi.
Co to jest za efekt ryby oko?
Oczy ryby.
Bro is looking with those eyes like...
Ła. Jezu. Pieprzyło ją do reszty. Maria was smiling, an eerie and incomprehensible expression on her face. It was almost as if she was making fun of everyone's ignorance. It was an expression I wouldn't have dreamed to find on Maria's face.
O!
Jo, Jezus, co się dzieje?
And she laughed. O Jezu, ona kiełba.
Co to jest? To jest Beatrice? Co to jest?
Jezu. Nie da się nawet wyjść klimat z wami.
Okej.
That
So logical.
eerie, sharing laugh was something I didn't want to believe was possible. Even though I was looking at it
Jezu Maria, po
right,
prostu pokazała
at it
pierwsze
right
emocje
in
w
front
życiu.
of my eyes.
Wow!
Nieźle.
Boję się, jestem przerażona. Jestem Marią, ale jestem przerażona. Hihihi, a nie. You people aren't even close. Can't you tell just by looking?
Muzyka
Halo,
wokół
gdzie
nie
jest
pasuje.
U? No, trudno.
Uuu. Jezu Maria,
While
jest
everyone was
crazy
busy
trochę.
being scared out of their wits, Maria kept on cackling happily by herself. Cackling? After a while, that laugh was suddenly and abruptly cut off. But her expression still looked like it belonged to someone completely different from Maria.
Jo, jak blisko
Jezu,
No, ale,
Jaka
ale pan Ząbek się odpalił.
Ona ma Roblox face.
Ale smutne.
This is the seven magic circle of the sun. The characters are written in Hebrew. Leave it here.
Nie, Żydzi.
Jest, czemu ona tak wygląda?
Już wiadomo, kto za tym stoi. I co nic nowego.
Jak zawsze.
Jak zawsze.
Powiedziałam, sorry.
A,
Nie
dobra.
mogę sobie.
Ah. Maria stole the writing material from the stunned Hideyoshi's hand.
Wow.
She then started drawing another magic circle with a rustle, right next to the one Hideyoshi had drawn.
Jezu, co się dzieje? See? It looks sort of like this, right? Jezu, Maria jest crazy.
Was... Yeah, it was... Maria, incredible! You really know a lot.
Jessica tried to smooth things over by praising Maria. Maybe she wanted to confirm that this was still the Maria we all knew so well. But Maria didn't answer her in any way in particular. Maria began swiftly writing unfamiliar characters in the corners of the shape. When Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanja saw them, their eyes immediately began to open wide.
Written on the top, written on the top and bottom and left and right are the names of the angels who preside over wind, fire, earth, and water. Chasan, Arel, Forlach, and Taliahad. And in the four corners are the names of the four great kings: Ariel, Seraph, Tarsis, and Cherub. Yes, nie rozumiem. Is that what you saw?
Even if they hadn't been able to correctly write what they'd seen, when they were once again shown something identical, it was difficult for them to realize the two were the same. Czemu on jest na hebrajski? When Maria asked them whether it
Bo jest
matched, Uncle Hideyoshi
autystyczna
and
i to
Dr.
jest jej
Nanja
special
nodded
interest.
over and over again.
No, to prawda.
No to wychodzi.
Czy
There's no mistake. That's it. I'm sure there was characters that looked like that. you able to write something like that? There were also characters written around the circumference.
I know. Like this, right?
Maria quickly began to surround the circumference with more Hebrew writing.
It's from Psalm of the Old No, yes. It's from Psalm of the Old Testament, the 16th and 7th verse of the 116th Psalm. You must at least read the Bible, right?
Wow.
Musisz
Acting
przeczytać
as though
Biblię, żeby
knowing this
zrozumieć
was only
Umineko.
common sense, Maria laughed. For a while, everyone, including me, was at a loss for words. A little later, George Aniki
Just
returned to his
read the
senses and slowly
Bible.
managed to speak.
That's why it's so simple.
Tam jest odpowiedź do Umineko.
That's incredible. I'm surprised. So, what meaning does this magic circle have?
Ooh, no. It's a magic circle to borrow the power of the sun. He who wears it as a talisman round in a gold shall be able to break free from the bonds of any prison and receive the power to gain freedom.
Duh.
Wow.
Break free from the bonds and gain freedom. It sounds safe.
The word bonds is not limited in its interpretation to some kind of physical object. Therefore, it does not only hold meaning for people locked up in an actual jail. It can also refer to the release from mental bonds such as ties of obligation and inescapable fate. Crazy.
Ties of obligation and inescapable fate, do you say? That's also pretty deep.
But I really don't understand. What does this have to do with those 6 bodies? Far from being released, they were killed and stuffed in a storehouse. Weren't they?
It's not like the magic circle was drawn for their sakes. The 6 of them were there for the sake of the magic circle. It is truly pity.
Kurde, nie zrobiłem screenshota tamtej twarzy.
What do you mean?
Ja zrobiłam
What
wszystkich.
in the world do you mean
Dobrze.
when you say the 6 of them
Dobrze.
were there for the sake of the magic circle?
No byli,
Jak
żeby umrzeć.
coś, to z tego co kojarzę, w folderze z Umineko mam chyba wszystkie twarze, mogę po prostu je ściągnąć.
Niesamowite.
To dobrze. Nie no, zaspoilerujesz sobie wtedy.
No, to
Pan
prawda.
Bo jeszcze
Ząbek
masz inne
pointed
twarze, których nie było.
finger.
Maria lifted up her pointer finger and waggled it as if she were making fun of us.
Kukuda, budziła się.
That's written around the circumstance. Nie. Circumference.
Circum.
Can't you read it?
Nie potrafię tego przeczytać, normiki.
Circumference.
Psalms chapter 160, verse 16 and 17. I will read it for you. Wow, Maria będzie cytać z pamięci psalmy. The Lord has freed me from my chains. I will offer to you the sacrifice of thanksgiving and will call on the name of the Lord. See?
You say, I've got no idea what you're talking about.
You're saying that they're human sacrifices. What if Maria has just read aloud was a vital part of the magic circle? Then it was saying that sacrifices had to be offered in order for this magic circle to be effective. So human sacrifices had been offered inside the storehouse where the magic circle had been drawn. A heartbeat later, everyone else seemed to reach the same conclusion. Some people were shocked, and others spat out that this was insane as they punched their knees. This was starting to get incredibly disturbing, and we couldn't accept it or understand it. I don't care what kind of magic circles or curses other people believe in. I won't pick a fight with them. But did they really kill Dad and the rest as sacrifices for crap like that? I couldn't stand that feeling. Compared to this, I preferred it when we were still disgusted by that theory about the fight over the inheritance. As I started getting pissed off with a feeling between anger and sadness, I broke from the circle everyone was in and returned once again to the window. Something had gone insane since yesterday. There was that letter from the witch Beatrice that Maria had read aloud at the last night's dinner. Ever since that point, it feels like this whole mansion and this whole island has been getting more and more firmly locked inside some kind of bizarre world. That's right. When I think back on it, that letter was an invitation from the witch. The ruler of the Nighttime Island has invited us inhabitants of the day into another world. A typhoon and the radio had been interrupted and the island was shut off by the typhoon. So you really could call this place another world, cut off from the real one by now. Yeah, as this island is now, it's perfectly normal for witch to send us letters and for human sacrifices to be offered up for the sake of magic circles. So what will happen next? Will some weird people wearing goat masks start doing the Bone Festival dance or something? It's hopeless. It's hopeless, I don't get it. The inside of my head's all screwed up and I don't even know what to think. Anger, sadness. The opposing emotions all swirled up together and they started to suck me in. Unable to resist, I could do nothing but cover my eyes with my hands and trust to my mind and body as I started getting sucked in. As I started losing heart, I began to recall a memory from when I was small. Ooh. It was from when I was very young. I had unfortunately seen a scary occult movie on TV, and for a while I hadn't ever been able to go to the bathroom by myself. It all better gave me an exaggerated laugh and said this.
Hey, Butler, why do you think they go to all the trouble to make movies like this about demons and the occult and such? It's because they don't exist. Something that ridiculous can't be found anywhere on the planet. Because they don't exist, people want to see them and go to a lot of effort making them. That's why those occult movies just make me laugh. If I were forced to choose, I'd say, rather than demons and monsters, this year's earnings call and angry wives are 100 million times scarier. I'll go further, okay? From my point of view, getting scared is a recreational emotion. Something for people who have got room to relax, both in their hearts and their lifestyles. They had so much free time, they didn't know what to do with it. So, in order to entertain their mind with unusual emotions, people started creating a culture with demons and the occult and stuff.
Seriously, why have I been acting so damn thick-headed? Thick-headed. I was totally taken in. Don't try to mess with me. This is the human world. I don't give a damn about witches, demons, magic circles, and sacrifices. The human who killed Dad and everyone else is still on this island. That's all that there is to it, right? The next person who started speaking to my heart was Kiryu-san.
You see, in both chess and shogi, you reach the very, very last stage of the game and get closer and closer concerning cornering your opponent. The number of optimal moves you could possibly make gets smaller and smaller. Therefore, if you're backing someone against the wall, or if someone's doing the same to you,
No, bo się pierwszy dziewczyn chyba.
Hmm.
Dobra, żyję. Nie zostałem zamordowany jeszcze.
No dobrze.
both players' moves become infinitely easier to read. In other words, when you're completely cornered and you think you have no moves left, that is the moment when it's easiest to read your opponent. However, when a person is forced into a defensive position, they can't help but lose their ability to think clearly, so they aren't able to get their minds around their opponent's moves. That's when you spin the chessboard around.
Boom.
Damn.
się przewrócił.
Co? Nie.
Wiecie,
With all my
pokój
strength, I
patrz,
slapped my face with...
Pokój się zatrzymał.
Może ode mnie,
Było,
mój
w
sławek.
sensie, że była animacja tam.
A, to! Ten. Dobra. Ah. With all my strength, I slapped my face with both hands. Now my eyes were truly open. When you don't understand anything and you're completely cornered, just like I am now, isn't that the perfect time to spin the chessboard around? While on the defensive, we can't even guess at the culprit's scheme. If we spin it around and look at it that way, just what might we see? First off, at the time the culprit committed the murders, they knew the island was being cut off by the typhoon. Therefore, they should have understood that even if they carried out the murders, they wouldn't be able to get away early the next morning. In short, the culprit had begun without securing a way to escape. Furthermore, that bastard tossed the corpses in the storehouse. Daddy was even kind enough to say, here they are, with a weird bit of graffiti. In other words, since we'd probably find the corpses sooner or later, they wanted to show them to us. If we'd all been dim, and had announced the storage shed, the culprit's goal would not have been achieved, would it? If you think about it this way, that bastard of a culprit, since this morning, they must have been watching out over every move with bated breath. After all, if we hadn't been so kind as to discover what was on the storehouse, all that hard work and preparation they did last night would have just gone poof. What did the culprit want to make us feel by showing us the corpses in the storehouse? All 6 of the bodies had their faces noticeably destroyed. Was it a grudge? A warning? The defacement of the bodies had occurred after death, so it hadn't been the means by which the culprit had killed. It didn't mean anything to those who had been killed. It did have meaning to those who found the bodies. The culprit wanted to make it appear that they had been killed so brutally. After thinking this way, I really want to tell that bastard to stop taking me so lightly. Just dance to that tune. If you're told, please be scared, you can't just say, really? Sure thing. When someone tells the great Ushiromiya battler, the entrance is right here, I'm the kind of guy who'll start wanting to sneak in through the window. The next thing that had me concerned was the so-called magic circle on the shutter. As Maria, who had shown that her knowledge of the occult rivaled grandfathers, had recognized that the magic circle was genuine. They must have drawn that thing in pitch black darkness, taking a lot of time and holding an umbrella in one hand. Isn't that amount of hard work and perfectionism impressive? What purpose would have been all that wouldn't be worth all of that effort? If we were looking for a fan of the occult in this mansion, most likely all of us would naturally suspect grandfather. Do they want to make us think grandfather was involved? But if that's all they wanted, they could have just drawn any old scribble that looked like a magic circle. It wasn't like any of us amateurs would be able to tell the difference between genuine and fake. However, this magic circle was genuine, and furthermore, it had even been written in Hebrew. So this magic circle had a message that could only be understood by someone with knowledge of the occult. A message is a form of communication. By sending it, they were hoping for a reaction. A reaction. For some reason, we couldn't find Grandfather now. I don't know how Grandfather might have spotted the magic circle on the shutter, but he did choose to hide himself in reaction to that? No, it was a trap to make us suspect that Grandfather had participated? You could read it either way. Damn, that's annoying. What kind of reaction was the culprit hoping to get out of us by putting on this occult show? Somehow, that felt like the culprit's weak point. The letter from Beatrice that Maria had read aloud during last night's dinner sprang back into my mind. This was a freak who'd asked us to enjoy a battle of wits. Isn't that interesting? This is a battle of wits between us and the witch. Will we be sucked up by her occult game first? Or will we pull off her fake skin first? There's a whole day until the typhoon passes. Why not enjoy ourselves?
Świetna zabawa.
Kojarzycie ten wiersz, chyba Burza się nazywał, gdzie gościu jakby tam sztorm był na łodzi i on po prostu czekał aż umrze. To ja bym była w tej sytuacji.
Mówisz?
No po prostu gdzieś usiadła, bo jak okej, pa.
I finally noticed that the inside of the parlor had gone quiet again. Everyone had sunk into their favorite sofas, some deep in thought. Some irritated, some acting depressed. Maria was once again enjoying the TV as it never left it. It looked like she found the commercials more fun than the boring program, and she happily yelled that
Lewy.
musisz zrobić.
Dziękujemy.
And giggled.
Przepraszam,
I
zamyśliłam
stared
się.
at each I stared at each person's appearance in turn. If there isn't a 19th person, the culprit must be in this room.
To na pewno Jessica.
Na pewno.
No, ma najbardziej wkurwioną twarz, więc...
No tak.
Maria, jaka szczęśliwa.
To na pewno nie Maria. Na pewno nie Maria. Na pewno.
Totalnie nie.
Right now, Aunt Natsuki is searching the mansion with the servants, right?
Right?
They wouldn't. They shouldn't say in this room. This mansion is where the culprit has to be. After all, there was also the possibility that Aunt Natsuki was behind this, and we still can't deny that one of the servants might be the killer. Anyone could be guilty. Still, Aunt Natsuki and the rest sure are taking their time. Of course, it's not a small mansion, but isn't this taking a little too long just to walk around checking the windows and doors? No nie, no znowu kogoś zabili.
Ja nie mogę.
Just as I was thinking this, Aunt Natsuki and the rest returned.
Jak chcemy spoilery, możemy znowu przeczytać ten epitaf. Bo tam
No tam było,
jest...
że chyba drugiego dnia, jak ktoś zostanie rozłączony...
Nie słucham.
Mhm.
Ale
Tak,
daily-
coś tam się
daily to
dzieje,
już
ale
było.
to nocy, w nocy.
Ja wiem,
A
W północy.
ale ja...
No,
Ja wiem.
to się dzieje.
No to było foreshadowing, to było mówione, co się stanie.
No. Not one of them was missing. Their relief was short-lived. Uh-huh. Everyone looked at Aunt Natsuki in shock.
Wykrzyknik.
Wykrzyknik, wykrzyknik, kropka, kropka, kropka. The talk I had with Aunt Eva started to creep back into my mind. The possibility that the culprits had enough in numbers and or weapons to kill all of those 6 at once. Oh!
No,
Yo.
forgive me if I startle you. I brought this to be prepared for the worst.
Fair.
Sigma.
After all, that thing in Aunt Natsuki's hand was a rifle. At a glance, its silhouette looked a lot like a hunting gun, but it was unusually short and kind of looked like a kid-sized weapon. However, it had a weightiness to it that made it clear that it was no kid's toy.
That gun is Kinzo sounds, isn't it?
Did you know about it? That's right. I remember it was the father's old collection and I managed to find it.
Whoa, awesome! Natsuki-san, is that thing real?
Yes, it's real. It can fire live ammunition, amunicja po polsku.
I mean,
Long ago,
Trzyma
father
rękę na
used it
spuście. Kogoś zastrzeli teraz.
use it to scare away wild birds.
perhaps.
That takes me back. Where did you find that thing? No matter how much I asked him to let me touch it, he never let me lay even one finger on it.
Oh,
Teraz staną psiapsiłami.
grandmothers had one of these. I didn't know that.
Hubert poprawiam.
Long ago, grandfather was really addicted to cowboy films.
Yes, co się dzieje?
That generation really liked this kind of rifle.
Is that a Winchester? But I never seen one that short before.
I remember. It's that gun. It really takes me back. As the one on the Steve McQueen.
Meijiro
Fired off
McQueen.
and wanted.
Queen!
Alive or dead.
Uma Musume.
Father sure has good taste.
It is an item the master ordered specially from America long ago. As you can
Wow.
see, it is a working gun, so please don't tell anyone about this.
Komu mają powiedzieć, bro?
Reszta nie żyje.
Przecież wszyscy ją widzieli.
He was quite fond of it right after he managed to acquire it. It seems the workings that ejected the cartridges were more interesting to him than shooting it, and he played around with it back in the forest all the time.
Still, it's rather disturbing. Are you sure you should be dragging this out? This is to prepare for the worst. There was probably more than one offender involved. Furthermore, those horrible people killed 6 of us, including my husband. I have a responsibility to protect everyone until tomorrow in my husband's place. No, wygląda jakby chciała zabić niż ochronić na razie.
Asahi-san said this. Ah, tamki. Asahi-san said this as she slumped down to one of the sofas and took a deep breath. She had been trying to find grandfather, as well as check the doors and windows. Since grandfather wasn't with her, she probably still didn't know where he was.
I carefully checked all of the doors and windows for the mansion. However, you must prepare for anything. Everyone, I think it would be best if we all remain here. Oh, good point. If everyone gathers here, then we can all feel more secure by keeping an eye on each other. What do you mean by that, Eva-san? Nothing really. I'm just agreeing with your opinion, aren't I?
There was a stormy atmosphere between the two of them. If you think about who was the most suspicious from the inheritance problem standpoint, Aunt Eva was the obvious answer.
One chyba jednak nie są besties.
However, there was no proof that Aunt Natsuhi was innocent. Now, if you view Beatrice's letter as one of the grandfather's complicated pranks and think of this crime as just an extension of that, there's more than enough reason to suspect even grandfather. Also, Aunt Natsuhi thought the criminal was on the outside, but Aunt Eva thought the criminal was on the inside. And short, and was the question of whether or not a 19th person exists. That same question had been repelled endlessly since last night's dinner, with the letter from the witch who called herself Beatrice. So, was the culprit among us? Among us? Or not?
Among us.
Among us. And did the witch Beatrice exist, or not? If you assume that something as stupid as a witch can't exist, you're basically saying that one of these relatives here, who share a common bloodline, is the culprit. If that was too unpleasant, it'd be much more comfortable to simply accept the fairy tale-like character of the witch. A witch. The witch drawing a bizarre magic circle and offering human sacrifices. If I could accept that rubbish, I'd be able to trust all the people in this room. However, damn common sense got in the way. It kept repeating that witches don't exist. In that case, the culprit must be among us. Among us.
Jezu, co to było? Przestraszyłam się aż.
Boom, boom. In the middle of the seemingly endless rain, none of us could break the silence.
Nie wiem, czy robimy jakieś przetasowanie ról, czy nie.
A właśnie, no.
No co,
Można
W
co?
sumie.
Trochę osób umarło
tak trochę
i później... No.
Dobra, to można poczytać. Charakter.
Zobaczmy, kto tam
O,
pierwszy.
dobra,
O, są nawet
O,
zaznaczone.
dziękuję! Wspaniale! Jest
Dobra,
pozaznaczone.
Miło.
Kinza jest na szaro. Sus.
Bo nie wiadomo gdzie
Bo
jest.
nie wiadomo. Jego
Mm.
status jest niewiadomy.
No to Kinza chyba zostanie tak jak był. Natsuki i Jessica też bym zostawił tak jak są. Ewa... Nie wiem, co sądzicie?
Dać niektóremu.
Nie!
Chciałbyś niektóry?
Nie, bo chlebek gada sama ze sobą.
To prawda
No
akurat.
właśnie.
Wcześniej wam to nie przeszkadzało jakoś.
No ale teraz nie
No,
wiem.
wziąłbym jedną
może
postać, bo
być.
mi jedna została.
No właśnie. o
Nie,
tym
to
chciałam.
weź Natsuki, ja nie
No,
chcę.
wszystko jedno,
Ja nie
którą.
chcę jakby.
Bro, jaki hejter. Ej,
Po prostu
nie,
dajcie,
nie,
którą
nie,
nie chcecie,
nie,
proste.
To weź Natsuki, ja chcę być Ewą dalej, ja chcę być Sassy.
Okej.
Dajcie mi proszę 2 minuty. Jak już tego.
Dobra, co dalej?
W sumie, bo Daily dosyć dużo
jeszcze?
ról ma,
Coś?
bo ma Jessikę, tego
Nanjo,
od
Hideyoshi
Ewy,
i jeszcze tą babcię.
lekarza i babcię. No to są 4.
Mhm.
Ja
No ja
mam
mam
teraz
teraz właściwie
dwie.
dwie. Też mam dwie.
No, bo mi zabrali.
Mi wystarczy ról.
No zdecydowanie.
No ty tak.
Dobra, Daily, które dwie role mogłabyś oddać? Albo jedną.
Daily chyba
Teraz,
chyba.
teraz pytanie,
A
czy chlebek,
niektóry
czy ja
ile
bym
ma?
wziął? Niektóry
W tej chwili mam dwie.
teraz dwie.
A, okej.
Czyli Daily ma 4, my mamy po 2.
Hmm. Ja mogę być babcią jak coś w sumie. Tylko, że Daily zniknęła.
W kluczowym momencie. No cóż. Daily. Dobra, nie wiem co z tym robimy.
Baby
Czytamy dalej?
zdechła.
No, tak
Ach.
wychodzi 2-3 role na osobę, to... No to ja mogę mieć 2.
Mhm. Ja bym chętnie przygarnął jeszcze jakąś rolę.
No to jak Daily wróci, to możecie jakąś dać.
Dobra.
Nie wiem, to chyba czekamy, czy co? Ja bym powiedział, że chyba czekamy.
No to poczekajmy. Ja bym dzisiaj jednak trochę wcześniej skończył, bo jestem totalnie rozpierdzielony po wycieczce.
Ja jestem za,
Mhm.
bo trochę chora jestem.
Ajej.
No,
No to ja
teraz
bym
trochę.
proponował 22
Nie
na
mam
przykład.
papieru do załatwienia. O, no dobra. Ja mam papiery do załatwienia, więc spoko.
W sumie już
Ale
tylko
we wtorek
godzina mi
naj-
została.
No. Ale we wtorek jedziemy z pełną parą. 7 godzin, nie wiem co sądzicie.
O, 7 godzin? Nie, 10.
A,
Trzeba
no.
nadrobić.
O,
Przepraszam.
Śmiało.
Ja chyba nie będę mieć problemu.
No i git.
W sumie dobra rola dla mnie, Natsuki, bo mnie też często głowa boli.
Bro!
Będziesz się nadawał.
O, Daily.
Aha, co się stało?
Czekaliśmy na ciebie i generalnie robimy przetasowanie ról. I teraz
Aha.
pytanie, czy chciałabyś zwolnić 2 albo 1 rolę?
No mogę. Jak
Bo masz 4 aktualnie. To wolisz 2 zwolnić, czy jedną?
jedno.
Jedną. To teraz Chlebek, chciałabyś rolę, czy ja mogę sobie wziąć?
A chcesz bardzo?
No, bardzo bym chciał, bo w sumie
No to sobie weź.
Dobra, no to wezmę. No to Daily. Hideyoshi albo Nanjo, albo babcia.
No to nie wiem, Nanjo.
Nanjo, dobra, no to ja przejmę Nanjo w takim razie. No to ustalone. Czytamy dalej.
Chyba, że niektóry, czy... A nie, bo
Hmm?
jak ja... Nie chciałbyś się ze mną zamienić, żeby było tak, że ja mam babski głos, a ty męski? Czy możesz być na studiu, czy gdzieś po boku? Bo mi został jeszcze Hideyoshi. To jak możemy się zamienić?
W sumie mi wszystko jedno. Już...
Dobra.
Dawaj, niektóre bądź babą.
Dobra, będę pan.
No i spoko.
Wtedy jest śmieszniej po prostu, jak ktoś
Tak.
mówi jak baba.
No.
Zabawy.
Dlatego ja jestem Kizo. Czy już możemy grać?
To wszyscy już spokojnie
Było.
wszystko zrobił.
No,
O, już lecimy? Już się skończyły sprawy organizacyjne? Dobrze.
tak jest.
No.
Dobrze. Lunch ended, and the servants removed the tableware and went to the kitchen. The wind and rain neither weakened nor strengthened, and the island remained cut off from the outside world. At first, it seemed as though Natsuhi planned to stop anyone from taking a step outside the room. But when it came time to prepare lunch, she finally realized this would be impossible. However, in order to avoid having anyone alone in the kitchen, she told the 3 servants to go together. Because of that, the servants were the first ones given the right to leave the stuffy parlor, which had been packed with 11 people. Since breakfast had immediately followed that terrible incident, preventing most of us from eating much, everyone tore into their lunches silent.
They would wash the dishes so you can rest a while. Hanon-kun, Genji-san, do you want something to drink?
I don't need anything. Canon?
I don't need anything either.
You two must have been so busy and so early in the morning. It's no wonder you're worn out.
Blue Moon.
The only noise was that... Kurde mi ścięło.
Ajaj.
The only noise was that of Kumasawa washing the dishes, which resounded throughout the kitchen. Genji and Kanon sat in some chairs a short distance away, their eyes slightly closed. Just as Kumasawa had said, those two had probably built up a great deal of fatigue. But that didn't mean they couldn't let it show in front of the relatives. Avoiding that was one of their virtues. After the silence had continued for some time, Kanon opened his mouth and muttered.
Shaman. Why did she have to die in such a horrible way?
Forget about the manner of her death. It was nothing more than bad luck.
Aha, ona była jego siostrą.
No.
You're right. It was nothing more than bad luck. Znaczy przybraną siostrą chyba.
Kanon is...
No dobra, ale
To samo było.
chowali się razem, więc prawie jak siostra.
Mhm.
They both fell silent once again. Kanon's expression was filled with grief.
To think that Shannon-chan's actually dead. I still can't believe it. Poor thing. Not being able to see her again feels like a lie. I just wanted to see her smiling face one more time.
Kumasawa spoke with her back facing them. After all, Kumasawa hadn't seen Shannon's corpse, so she had no trouble mentioning Shannon's face. When Cannon heard those words, it reminded him again of how only half of Shannon's face had been left, and his grieving expression twisted even further.
Why did Beatrice-sama do that to Shannon? If she wanted a sacrifice, there were plenty of others to choose from. Why? Why?
It was nothing more than bad luck. If you were less lucky, you or I might have been lying out there instead of Shannon. Or it could have been someone else entirely. Everything is left to fate.
Genji-sama, you said the door to Madame's room was stained with traces of something like blood, right? The same substance that was painted on the shutter.
Indeed. It was an unsettling mark. Almost as though someone with blood-stained fingers had been trying to pull out the doorknob. No, scratched through the door. That sort of unpleasant mark.
So does this mean Beatrice-sama came to visit Madame's room and tried to open the door, but could not?
Sigma.
Genji, Genji thought back to the time he had seen those traces of blood on the door to Natsuhi's room. With the substance sticking to the door around the doorknob and the mark of something scratching against the door, it had definitely appeared as though someone had tried to open the door but couldn't.
Why? Did the Madame avoid being chosen as a sacrifice? If only she'd been chosen, Shannon wouldn't have had to die.
Just then, a loud, sharp noise came in from the hall. Both of them turned around, surprised. That's a pretty interesting chat you've been having there. Let me join in too. Before any of the servants realized it, Peter was standing in the doorway to the kitchen.
Butler-sama? How rude of us.
Genji and Kanen-kun stood up, surprised, and hastily bowed. But he didn't care about stuff like that. I was more concerned with continuing their discussion. I told them I was going to the bathroom, so they let me go. I thought I'd suffocate if I was locked up in that room any longer. I was about to come ask you guys for some water, but then I overheard something pretty interesting. You don't need to bow your heads or anything. Please, let me hear the rest.
That just now wasn't really...
I've been listening to you for a while. Don't try to hide it now. So, I'll ask directly. Who is this Beatrice? She's supposed to be a witch from the kid's story, but it doesn't look that way now. Kanan-kun averted his gaze. It was obvious that he didn't want to talk about this, which only made me want to ask even more. While making an effort to smile, I grabbed the collar of his shirt.
Oh.
Last night, this would be none of my business. But after this morning, everything's changed. Now that Dad and the rest have been killed, this is totally my business. I have the right to listen to this suspicious story, don't I? I glared into Cannon's eyes as he continued to avert his gaze in apparent pain. Since there was a big difference in our heights, Cannon had to stand on his toes and look like it hurt a bit.
Butler-san, please let go of him. Candlestick isn't really hiding anything.
Then you won't have any problem talking about it, right? It's lonely being out of the loop, you know? When I tried to further twist up his collar, Genji-san cut out between us and spoke. In his expression were faint traces that he'd made up his mind to do something. Apparently, he had no intention of hiding it.
I can tell you about it. Canon only hesitated because you might have taken it badly, Butler-sama.
Hesitating? Huh. That's very manly of you. Whatever it is you're talking about, it's even more unpleasant having it kept a secret. Tell me about it. It's not like we have anything better to do before tomorrow comes. A slightly spooky story might be the best way to avoid getting bored. Kenji-san and Kanon-kun looked at each other, then nodded as though they decided to talk.
Understood. Please ask us anything. We will talk.
Right. Then I'll ask. Who in the world is Beatrice? All I know is that she's a witch who lives in the forest of Rokkenjima. I've heard it's a story grandmother or someone invented to keep people out of the dangerous forest. Is that wrong?
No, it isn't wrong. It's as you say. Beatrice is a witch who dwells in the forest of Rokkenjima.
Butler-sama, I don't expect you to believe this all of a sudden, but Beatrice-sama exists. She's a real person, the one who gave the master a vast amount of gold and who worked by his side for many years.
Huh. Oh, come on. Is grandfather paying you to repeat everything he says? I laughed like it was a joke, but neither Genji-san or Kanon-kun laughed. Not even Kuwa-sama Bachan, who was avoiding my eyes, flustered as she started washing the dishes. So, unfortunately, I was the only one laughing. Painfully. Bitterly. I see. That's why Genji-san refused to mention it. If you really mean it, of course I take it badly. So, you're saying that a person named Beatrice actually exists?
Yes. She has been working for the master since before the mansion was built on this island. She has most likely been working for him even longer than I have.
What do you know? Kiri-san's 3 years off. Grandfather really did have a confidante called Beatrice. Is that person on the island now?
Is this person in this room with us right now?
Real.
Caesar.
Dobra, lecimy. Yes, I believe that she's here.
That's a vague way to say it. I guess that means you haven't seen her face today or yesterday.
That is correct. It is extremely difficult to say, but
Kanon-kun once again dropped his gaze, avoiding my eyes. Come on, don't just stop there. That's like freezing an inch before the blow, right? I urged him on chokingly again. However, it looked like Kanon was still confused as to whether he should speak or not. Then Kumasawa Bachan whispered.
You cannot see her face because Beatrice-sama has no form.
She has no... What did you say?
Beatrice-sama has no body. Therefore, unless Beatrice-sama wishes it, common people like us are not able to see her form.
I have heard that the portrait shows what Beatrice-sama looked like back when she had a human form. It seems he yearned for that figure so much, he would often stand in front of that portrait.
Beatrice-sama sometimes shows herself by changing her form into glittering butterflies. On the rare occasion that you spot them somewhere in the mansion, there is a rule that you absolutely mustn't chase after them. It is whispered that you will meet with disaster if you do. In fact, there was a servant who broke that rule and quit because of great injury.
Wait a sec, are you kidding me? Are you all serious about this?
Butler-sama. Beatrice-sama has already arrived. Such language may be unwise.
Beatrice-sama does not like it when she is profaned. If you doubt her existence, you will surely meet with disaster.
Butler-san, you probably find this topic unpleasant. But you know what? Beatrice-sama does exist.
She exists. Beatrice-sama hates people who doubt that.
Can't you tell, Butler-sama? Beatrice-sama has already arrived here.
Is this Beatrice in the room with us?
Come on. Come on, quit it. I'm weak against that stuff. Enough with the cheap threats. However, there was no trace of a joke in the eyes of the three servants. On the surface, I laughed and tried to look unconcerned, but I was quickly starting to sober up. Their eyes were also sobering up fast.
Butler-san, I beg that you stop profaning Beatrice-sama. Please, trust me.
Kumasawa-bachan, who was usually cheerful and would always tease people, now spoke with a totally serious face. Well, even if you say she exists, I don't see anything. Without love, it cannot be seen. Ooh. I don't see anything. Are you trying to say she's standing right next to me or something? Quit joking around.
Zawał.
Mario jump scare.
Boję się.
Just then, that unnerving laugh suddenly filled the kitchen.
Roblox face.
When I turned around, Maria was standing there by the entrance. But her expression and the feeling about her presence felt exactly the same as the servants.
Whether your wavelength matches or not is determined at birth. Czemu ma taką bitę? Butler, you were born with mismatched wavelengths. That's why you can't see her. Ma taką bitę. Nie mogę z tego. That's why you can't meet with her. And that's why you can't talk to her. You're the type Beatrice hates the most.
Ona ma dwa tryby. Jeden tryb to jest UU, a drugi tryb to jest hi. Ciekawe, czy ma jeszcze jakiś trzeci tryb.
Może. It was almost like she was laughing at me because I alone didn't understand. Oczywiście, Butler to debil.
No, Butler ma minusowe IQ. Do you want to know about
Mhm.
Beatrice? Beatrice is a 1,000-year-old witch. With all of the demons at her command, she can harness the power of alchemy to create the Philosopher's Stone and a vast quantity of gold. Grandfather built up all the vast wealth of the Ushiromiya family by making a contract with her. Yesterday I read Beatrice's letter, didn't I? That was real. Jezu, Butler, debilu. Well, I guess it's a pointless for me to try and force you to believe. Czemu Maria ma nagle takie self-realization?
To
After
strasznie
all,
skomplikowane słowo.
it looks like you were born without a trace of the sixth sense.
What are you talking about? Witches, demons? Who told you about that?
Mówię, ktoś jej przełącznik przestawi.
Mm.
I heard it from Beatrice herself.
Maria kept doing that unpleasant laugh. However, the servants who watched over this didn't even blink. Oho, ktoś chyba przejął Marysię. She heard it from that witch in the portrait adorning the entrance hall. Maria kept on laughing in a weird voice, as though this was nothing more or less than the truth. Maria, it might be rude to ask, but I'll ask one more time. Okay? Who gave you that letter yesterday?
I got it from Beatrice. How many times I must tell you before you understand? Ooh, you don't get it, do you? You can't see it. You can't believe it, can you?
Nie mów, bo teraz jest w drugim trybie.
A, przepraszam. Butler,
Battler.
you still don't
Oh.
understand. Beatrice Sama exists.
She exists, you say, but where?
Like I said, Beatrice Sama exists here.
Ooh.
That's right. Now that I think about it, I've been feeling for a while now that the servants' eyes haven't been pointed in quite the right direction. I figured they were just staring absent-mindedly, but that wasn't the case. The four here, Genji-san, Kanan-kun, Kumasawa-san, and Maria, everyone except me, was looking at this point right
Jezu,
behind me.
Butler jest genetyczną porażką i po prostu nie widzi.
Nie widzi duchów. Jako jedyny nie ma autyzmu w całej willi. Holding my breath tightly, I slowly looked over my shoulder. Of course, there wasn't anyone there. I've known that the whole time. However, everyone in the room except me was focusing on that point as if there was someone there.
Beatrice is the mighty golden witch who has lived for 1,000 years. But since she can't show her form to humans of the wrong wavelengths, she can't talk to them. Nie nadają na tych falach dobrych. And you know what? That's really sad. It means she truly despises it when people like you who were born without a fragment of the ability needed to sense magic deny that she exists.
Butler
nie.
powinien zrobić. No, Butler powinien sobie zrobić ten kurs krótkofalarski. Może by w końcu ją zobaczył.
Racja.
Paweł by ją
You're
zobaczył
lucky,
na
Butler.
oscyloskopie.
Good thing I gave you that charm yesterday, right? Bro. Don't you realize what kind of curse Beatrice would have put on you by now if you hadn't been carrying it around? You really are lucky, Butler.
Oh, that's Scorpion keychain. I thought it was just some cheap gift or something, but are you saying that it really had some power?
No przecież cały czas mówię, Jezu, jaki debil. If it weren't for that, you'd be lying in that storehouse as a sacrifice with your face crushed by now. You're so lucky, Butler.
I see. So if it weren't for that, I'd have been killed by now. Czyli co, teraz sobie może ją zwyzywać ile może i nic mu nie zrobi.
Butler, why don't
Aha.
you believe in Beatrice? Even though she exists. Right now, over there, look.
Jesus.
Hey, I will bet you want to believe it now. Believe it. And thank me for giving you that charm. If it weren't for that, you'd be in the storehouse right now. But then, maybe you would have saved someone else in exchange, right? Wiesz, śmianie się jak opętana jest strasznie trudne.
Bullshit. Right then, I burst into laughter. Playing witches had been pretty fun up until a second ago, but unfortunately, that last one seemed to be too much for me to gloss over. Then it's all useless, isn't it, Maria? If that's true, then I'm sorry, but it's all useless. When Maria saw me suddenly start laughing, she stopped. Even though she didn't understand what I was laughing at, she realized it wouldn't be pleasant for her. I thought it might hurt you, so I didn't say it earlier, but... Well, I thought I'd put that charm you gave me in my pocket. But I must have dropped it somewhere. So the charm can't be the only reason I'm alive now. Even though I shouldn't have been cursed by the witch, I'm perfectly fine. Sorry, but I don't believe in things I don't see with my own eyes. Sixth senses? Wavelengths? Magic sensitivity? Sorry, but I don't believe in fake stuff like that. When I hear the girls in class start talking about how good or bad their ability senses in supernatural is, it pisses me off. I don't know how much Grandfather is paying you, but if you're trying to talk me into joining some cult, believe me, you won't be able to do that easily.
Mina Mari
Butler
mówi
sama.
sama za siebie.
You guys are free to believe whatever you want, but when it comes to whether I believe it or not, the one who decides is always me. Sorry, but I can't believe in something as shady as Beatrice until I've seen her with my own eyes. I spoke forcefully and sharply, then Maria started cackling again.
Well, that's just fine, isn't it? Eventually, even people like you with totally mismatched wavelengths will be able to see Beatrice. Very soon, she will revive. Beatrice will revive. Once that happens, she promised to talk with me and play with me a lot.
Happy, happy, happy.
Ding, 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 ding,
Happy.
ding.
Jezu, jak mina! There will be absolutely no need for you to doubt or for us to force you to believe. She will appear very soon.
After a meal, some people tend to head to the bathroom while others prefer to relax for a bit. It seemed that several people had left the parlor, just like I did when I went to the kitchen to drink some water. In the end,
Jezu, ona dalej
tak dalej ma.
z tym pistoletem.
In the end, Aunt Natsuki reluctantly retracted her order that everyone remain packed into the parlor, on the condition that no one headed out on their own. Or stayed too far. Straight too far. In any case, if 11 people are shut up in the same room starting early in the morning, the air will start to stagnate. Also, quite some time had passed, so everyone was starting to recover from the shock of that morning, and their sense of danger might have been weakening too. However, if a certain fact that 6 people had been killed inside this mansion, so no one was completely negligent. So whenever they went out into the hallway for a breath of fresh air, trying to act off, they would quickly get scared of standing there, isolated. And eventually return to the parlor. I guess it's like the north wind and the sun. If you force someone to stay shut in, they'll resist. But if you tell them to do whatever they want, they'll come back obediently. People really do like not doing what they're told. When the servants finished cleaning up from the meal, they returned obediently to the parlor, just as Aunt Natsuki told them to, and sat on a sofa near the entrance, patiently awaiting orders. Maria, almost as though she had suddenly finished playing witches, had returned to the pure Maria I knew, saying,
Ooh.
What in the world happened back there? I hadn't felt even an atom of the presence of this person called Beatrice, who was supposedly standing behind me, invisible. However, I felt like I'd glimpsed a little of that presence inside Maria.
You're right. When Maria starts talking about witches, her personality changes. Butterkun, you also saw it down by the beach yesterday, right?
You mean that scorpion keychain? No, I don't mean like when her hurt. I'm talking about her having a dual personality or something. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that happens sometimes too. That thing Maria did when she was talking about the magic circle does happen every now and then. It's free though.
Apparently Jessica had spotted that Maria a few times. I just happened to catch it at a bad moment and was pretty freaked out seeing it for the first time. So what is that? Does Maria have a dual personality or something? Are you saying that her spiritual sense really is that strong and she's being possessed by a spirit or whatever?
No, I don't think it's that. Haven't you ever experienced it? When you were small, didn't you ever want to be someone other than yourself?
When humans are born, no one has any individuality. However, when they reach their growth period, their sense of self starts to be born. They want to be different than other people. But since everyone else is in the same class, and their class is learning the same things at the same time, at the same rate, and being forced into the same lifestyle, of course they aren't going to find anything that makes sense around them. Once they realize that, their first thing they do is start breaking the rules, in what's called their rebellious stage. Since everyone else follows the rules, they want to show off their individuality by breaking them. So even those who try to act off, mocking everyone around them, childish, can actually be viewed as cute kids searching for themselves, if you look at it this way. Oh, I'm lecturing all about this like I'm smart, but I actually got a second hand from George Aniki. I myself was one of the embarrassing guys who thought it was cool to act like a little bastard. Well, that was when I was at the age where you try to show off for the opposite sex.
The main feature of the growing period lies in an impulse to break away from your life as a kid, like a chick trying to crack open the shell of their egg. Do you know what makes children and adults different?
Age. What do you mean
So simple.
size?
So simple.
Hmm?
Nope,
So?
it's experience.
Ah.
Adults can look down on children because children have very little life experience. The reason they snort at everything children say is because they think kids know nothing about the real world.
Yeah, understand that. When you're a kid, you talk like you've got life and figured out somehow, trying to act like an adult, no matter what kids say. Adults just snort at them and say they're too naive or that they'll understand when they get older or something. Well, it's probably true, but to a kid, it's just annoying. Like they're being looked down upon.
I get it. It's a question of knowledge and experience. Well, I guess you're right that there's no reason to respect a person for their age if they're just wasted their lives.
Therefore, during the period when they try to separate themselves from other children, they also try to take on personality traits different from those around them. And if knowledge and experience is what separates kids and adults,
I I get it. If they know something no one else knows, it becomes part of their identity.
You know, when I was in elementary school, I learned things no one else knew. To get things no one else had, wear things no one else wore, and became a bit of a hero for it. I bet you've done the same thing, Battler.
Yeah. There was definitely an age when I wanted to excel in some skill or other. I see. So that's because I was trying to separate myself from being a child, or going through my growing period, in other words.
if you put a positive spin on it, the growing period forces you to separate yourself from others, thereby pushing you to gain skills and knowledge no one else has. This is also interesting form of a sociological standpoint, because people hate being like everyone else. They try to learn skills other people don't know. In this way, society can acquire the broad range of skills it needs to survive. The quality of the God's programming is truly surprising.
Bóg jest programistą.
To wiele wyjaśnia.
Well, well, unique personality traits can also be negative, right? Like, if say, everyone in the class was studying hard, but I was the only one slacking off, trying to stand out. Okay, that last bit was true about me. It's only recently that I've been able to thank the middle school teacher who slapped me after school. But well, I tried to jump over things no one else could, sprint as fast as I could, trying to lap those guys with good grades when we did a marathon. I just felt like doing it. It was in my nature that if I couldn't study well, then at least I could get back at them by exercising. I see. So I really did go through a proper growing period.
I guess boys really do tend to focus more on physical stuff. But you know, girls of the same age tend to focus more on mental, spiritual things. I bet there were groups of girls in your classes that got really interested in fortune telling and their spiritual senses.
Yeah, there were. They'd come over asking me for my sign and blood type, and then they'd laugh. Ah, I thought so. Really got on my nerves. No matter which class you go to, girls like fortune telling. Deciding whether your spirit sense is strong or weak, what your sensitivity is, whether you can see the unseeable. That kind of thing definitely happened to me.
That's because fortune telling and spiritual senses are things that aren't taught in school. To girls who tend to be more introverted, it's a genre that's easy to build and identity that's easy to build an identity upon, and one that holds a lot of interest for them.
Just like how when boys enter their growing period, they start acting tough and rebel against adults. When girls entered their growing period, they started getting interested in that kind of thing. Well, I didn't know.
So, Maria having so much interest in the occult isn't that rare amongst girls her age. Even if we accept that, I wonder if it means that creepy dual personality thing. Actually, chyba nie. Nie jestem pewien, ale chyba nie. Actually, I think I probably could accept that explanation, more or less.
As you just said, becoming an adult means gaining knowledge and experience. So, to gain that, it's necessary for children to learn all sorts of things and break free from childhood. However, there are certain convenient delusions that you see often in the world of children, both now and in the past. Do you know what I mean?
Bang dream? Czyta?
Bang dream!
You see it all the time in manga and anime, right? It's kind of like that. Like you've got memories from a previous life that start to resurface. Like you're being possessed by the soul of a great something, or whatever.
Or it could be that a sleeping gene gets awakened. Or maybe a sealed power or memory returns. There's all kinds. For some reason, stuff like that's really popular at that age. Why's that?
All of those examples you've just mentioned are illusions that let children immediately add to their sum of knowledge and experience. If a 9-year-old girl says she has a 1,000-year-old witch possessing her, then she gains a 1,009-year-old identity.
So basically, studying is annoying, but these illusions are convenient for people who want to brag about having skill no one else has. Amazing the
Delusional.
people around them.
So you can't brag about something without having to work hard or study. I see. Isn't that the kid's greatest dream?
Furthermore, in their desire to separate themselves from being kids, they always project an image of their ideal self. And it's not rare for that desired self to become an alternate personality. Even you, Butler-kun, probably had a slightly different personality at home and at school, right? It would probably be embarrassing if your friends at school saw how you were at home. At school, you try to project yourself as you want to be, but home is where you are your true self.
So, in other words, I'm changing my personality depending on the situation. Are you trying to say having multiple personalities is actually really common?
A girl who's a fan of the occult might say she's being possessed or awakened. Honestly, there are some guys who change their personality so much it's creepy. And some boys do it too, right? Guys who say they're blown their top and suddenly turn into some overplayed violent character. I bet they think it's pretty cool, but it's painful to watch.
Let's sum this all up. So you're saying that even if a girl about Maria's age shows a creepy second personality like she did a minute ago, it isn't such a rare or unusual thing?
Simply put, that's right.
Nie,
Identity is an important factor when building up one's sense of self.
to nie jest
If
normalne.
if you make fun of it, it could actually cause children to go back into their shells. So it's important to go along with them to some degree. Although the broad mindedness of the parent determines whether they play along in full or not.
Just a normal creepy girl.
Nikki, I can't believe you're single. You sound like you already raised kids through middle school. So, I wonder if Aunt Rosa also knew much about Maria's dual personality.
She knew about it. She's between us. Aunt Rosa really hated it. She said it was unpleasant and Maria was becoming increasingly isolated from the rest of the class. So anytime Maria started talking about the occult or laughing like a witch, she'd slap her. And it looks like Maria stopped talking that way in front of her.
Maybe that thing back there is just a little game for a girl facing her growing period. Just a girl trying to show that she was different and independent by holding
Ona jest przed
interest in witches
okresem
and the occult.
dojrzewania, o co im chodzi.
Ile
And
Maria
she
ma?
wanted to be...
Maria ma
Ale
9
ma.
lat.
Bo to trochę wcześniej.
To jest jeszcze
No.
przed.
Nie wiem.
Może nie chodzi
Mnie
dokładnie o
uczyli, że
okres
od 9.
dojrzewania.
No to nie wiem. Myślałam, że growing period to
Nie.
chodzi o okres dojrzewania.
Chyba to nie do końca to samo. O to samo chodzi.
Może nie o to chodzi, może nie chodzi o biologiczne. Nie wiem. And since she wanted to be different from herself, young as she was switching between her normal personality and the personality of her ideal, a witch. At first, I found that very disturbing. But after being lectured by George Janicki, it felt like this was a path everyone walked down at one time or another. I haven't told anyone, but when I was in kindergarten, I joined up with a little gang of kids trying to form an Earth Defense Force. EDF! Saying we'd help protect peace on Earth. My face turns red when I remember how, when we called battle practice, we would chant EDF! EDF! Just like usual, Maria was relaxing, immersed in the TV.
Ooh!
And laughing just like any girl her age. But on the inside, another personality, that of the ideal witch she respected and blindly accepted, was sleeping. But it wasn't anything extraordinary. It was perfectly natural for a girl of her age.
Boże, jaki kołp.
No, dosłownie.
I've cooled down a little. The shock from my bizarre experience in the kitchen just now is fading away. If I hadn't talked to Aniki and Jessica, I might still be frightened by the idea that an invisible witch is standing right behind me. However, can I really accept that as an explanation for what happened back there? If it had just been Maria, I could have explained it as the fickle delusions of a growing girl. But Kenji-san, Kanon-kun, and Kuwasawa-bachan had also been there. And none of them had denied what Maria said. They silently accepted that Beatrice exists. I was starting to feel a little uneasy. Aunt Eva's position was that no 19th person existed, that the crime was an inside job, family quarrels. On the other hand, Aunt Natsuki's position was that the culprit was hiding somewhere outside the mansion. So she rejected the possibility of an inside job and supported the idea that the 19th existed. And in the kitchen, Mary and the servants had also supported the idea of a 19th person. But according to them, that 19th person isn't human. They said it was an invisible witch, carrying out some mysterious plan. Is there a 19th person, or not? And is the culprit human, or a witch? For some reason, I couldn't just laugh off any of those possibilities, not even the most ridiculous story about the witch. Jessica, all I know about the story of the witch is that it was a story made by the adults to keep the kids too scared to enter the forests, but is it different here in the mansion?
I feel the same way you do, okay? I think it was just a stupid ghost story that parents made up so their kids would listen to them. But I can't deny that the atmosphere inside the mansion makes it a little hard to say it out loud.
After all, grandfather has proclaimed that Beatrice exists, and because of their position, the servants can't doubt that. Even Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsuhi don't want to get into a fight with him, so on the surface, they go along with it. So it's probably fair to say that doubting the existence of Beatrice is taboo to those who live and work in this mansion, unlike the rest of us who only come here once a year. Is that right?
Jessica took a deep breath in admiration. It looked like Aniki had guessed
Sorry.
right.
It's just like you say. No one really believes it on the inside, but on the outside, they accept that she exists. See, it's just like the way some people are about God. Even if they know God doesn't exist, they feel like it'd be harsh if they actually said it out loud.
How do you think the servants feel about it? Are they just going along with it because grandfather, their employer, says that she exists?
Well, I don't really know the details, but between the servants, the story about Beatrice has been treated like a sort of ghost story. Remember yesterday when Shannon was talking to us down by the beach? That story about how one night when she was doing all the rounds in the mansion, she saw something unsettling?
She did say something like that, didn't she? Back then, I thought she was just being really nice to help improve Maria's mood. But it felt like she was being serious when she said it. That's right, she definitely said it. She definitely said the same kind of thing that Genji and the rest had all unanimously declared back in the kitchen.
In addition, some servants have also seen will-o'-the-wisps and glittering butterflies they sing around. Kanon-kun also saw something like that when he went patrolling one night. And recently, you often hear servants talking about strange footsteps heard inside the mansion near midnight. We have whispered together that the Beatrice-sama in the portrait sometimes makes herself invisible and walks through the mansion. It happened a while ago, but even I have heard footsteps while patrolling at night that resemble those stories.
That's right, she definitely said that. Exactly the same thing that I had been told just now.
Ah, but there's nothing to be afraid of. Beatrice-sama is another ruler of this mansion, separate from the master. So there's no need to be unnaturally afraid if you respect her. I heard she won't do anything bad. However, she can be quite terrifying if you don't respect her, right? Correct. I've heard that just before I began working here. Someone who spoke badly about Beatrice-sama fell down the stairs and quit after receiving a large injury to their back. Because of that, there was a rumor between the servants that Beatrice-sama's anger had been brought down upon this person.
If you don't respect her, you'll suffer her laughing at her. So, to the servants, Beatrice's existence is just as credible as the story that if you pull pranks on Inari-san, you will be cursed by the Kitsune. Of course, even though everyone accepts that curses and the like don't exist in the modern era, people are still afraid and still have a little respect for them. You often see it when, in a residential area, someone is building a house and they call a Shinto priest for a ceremony to honor the god of that plot of land. You might think this was just a big waste of time and money, but it is said that if the workers don't do that, a big accident will occur, so they never neglect to do it. You will also hear about how, if an Inari's shrine is carelessly removed during a town replanning, there will be a curse by the Kitsune-sama. I think I might have read somewhere that when the occupying forces were trying to expand an airport, they tried to remove an Inari-san that was in the way, and the workers kept getting struck down by mysterious fevers. Even in modern cities like Tokyo, it wasn't rare to see modern buildings packed around an old Inari shrine, leaving the shrine itself untouched. And this wasn't limited to Japan. It's probably similar to how foreigners baptize babies. If you remember right by Christian doctrine, if unbaptized souls have even the slightest amount of soul, they will still go to hell. Pouring water on a child's forehead doesn't do anything but make them cry. But if doing just that, parents can prevent their children from going to hell, they will happily go through with that ceremony. In short, even in this modern society of reason, we were still unable to throw away every trace of belief and fear. You could even say that we accept certain sorts of supernatural things, though in a passive way. The only difference on this island is that Beatrice is the object of that worship. So, in other words, if anything happens that doesn't seem explainable in human terms, it's called the work of Beatrice. I think Shannon has said it herself. Windows and doors are locked, tightly shut, would be open the next time you went to check them. Lights that should have been on went out, and lights that should have been out were turned on. And if I remember, even Jessica was joking about it, saying it was also the work of Beatrice when she couldn't find her bag in the morning.
Your memory's pretty good. Normally, you... Whoa, poczekajcie. Let me follow a bit. Już go podniosę. Your memory's pretty good. Normally, you take some little imps to them, but on this island, it's Beatrice. Well, it's all pretty stupid, though.
This mansion has been standing for about 30 years by now, hasn't it? It's natural for things that old to get their fair share of ghost and occult stories, like the 7 mysteries at school.
But that's where I'll spin the chessboard around.
Huh?
Simply put, on this island, there's a rule that Beatrice gets blamed for anything that couldn't have been done by humans. Things that humans can't do. How many humans are there here? 18. In other words, the culprit is using the rules of this island to make it look like a witch committed this crime. Which proves that they desperately want us to think a 19th person did it. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit.
What do you mean you like it?
Let's assume some invisible 19th person exists and wants people to know they exist. If it were me, I'll do it with even more perfect timing.
What do you mean by perfect timing?
Well, the crime took place somewhere between the middle of the night and the dawn, right? We had some people who were talking together until the middle of the night, some people on night shifts, and some people who'd returned to their rooms and were sleeping. Everyone's alibi is really vague, so there's plenty of room to suspect that the crime was an inside job. George and Aunt Eva probably told you too, right? That there's a good chance this crime was an inside job?
Yes, I guess.
In other words, if this invisible 19th person really exists and wants us to let us know it, this first crime was a complete failure. No, in the first place, they chose the wrong time of the day to do it. If this invisible 19th person really wanted to show themselves, they had to make sure that the crime took place under conditions which proved that the remaining 12 people were all innocent. As long as there is a single human we can suspect, this 19th person attempt to highlight their presence fails. That's why near midnight, when everyone's alibis are at their vaguest, the 19th person existence is also at its vaguest. And yet, the culprit chose to commit the crime at that time.
By committing the crime, then, one of the 18 would obviously be suspected. And yet, someone handed Maria the letter and called themselves a witch, even though everyone denies they did.
In other words, you're trying to say that one of the 18 is trying to make it look like the 19th person called Beatrice exists? That's a pretty crazy idea. I think Bond's theory about someone hiding outside the mansion is a bit more credible. Butler, don't you tell me you actually think the one in this room is the culprit.
I do. Someone's trying to force us to accept that Beatrice exists. That's right. This whole thing started as far as the letter last night. I don't have any basis or proof, but with the chessboard turned around, this is my best guess. Objawiło mu się to we śnie. Daily.
Daily.
Przepraszam, coś mi się kliknęło. Seriously, that's so crazy. You're sure you haven't been reading too many weird detective novels?
However, it's an angle we can't ignore. Whether there's a 19th person or not, the culprit's definitely planning something involving that rule about this island. Just now, while listening to Butler-kun talk, I remembered something that's a little disturbing.
Something disturbing.
Yes, do you remember? Beatrice's letter. It said that Beatrice was going to collect interest. And by interest, it mentioned everything of the Ushiromiya family.
Jessica and I thought back on what Maria had read aloud the previous night.
Yeah, it said that. It definitely said that. That the collection of the interest was gonna take place shortly. But if the riddle of the gold should be solved, she'd lose her that right. Oh.
Grandfather received the gold and rebuilt the Ushiromiya family. In other words, according to Beatrice, everything created using the gold as capital counts as part of the interest. Which means...
That's pretty scary for a joke, Aniki. You don't mean everything of the Shiramiya family. In other words, everything that grandfather gave birth to. In other words, everyone with grandfather's blood flowing through their veins?
Dziadek ich urodził?
Właśnie coś mi się nie zgadza.
If you
To bardzo
interpret-
ciekawe.
Wow.
Żukowska by powiedziała, że tak mogło się zdarzyć, ale może nie komentujemy tego. If you interpret the letter that way, these murders are just Beatrice legitimately collecting interest. If that's the case, these crimes will continue, because the collection of interest is still only halfway completed.
George turned around, looking over the parlor. There were still many people who held the name Ushiromiya. And because Goddess and Shannon-chan had been killed, we knew that not even the servants were safe, despite lacking the Ushiromiya name.
Are they planning to kill us all? But that's weird, George Nissan. In that case, why only 6 people? They should have been able to kill a lot more. At worst, it should have been possible for them to assault everyone while they were sleeping and kill them in a single night. Why didn't they do that?
The special clause. If someone manages to solve the riddle of the gold, their right to the interest will be lost. And remember how the letter ended? It challenged us all to solve the riddle of grandfather's gold.
Jesus. It looks like we're finally understanding the culprit's message. In other words, the culprit's telling us to try and solve the riddle on that epitaph grandfather had made. On top of that, they're saying that if we just sit around, they'll keep collecting the interest. I realize this is all based on several guesses that are way out there. But not everything that happens in this world fits together in a perfect line. Most of the events we don't understand are only individual points. By fitting them into a straight line, we are beginning to understand. When the points at either end of the line are really close, the line itself is more logical and easier to understand. And when those points are really far away, the opposite is true. It's the distance between these points that makes us say our guesses are way out there. However, if the distances we span are too narrow, that means our thinking will be narrow too. Is there a difference between making guesses and reasoning? Am I just using easily made guesses to try and force this crime into a pattern I can understand? No, that's not it. When you're lost in the dark and searching for hands, what you're doing is relying on your imagination and making guesses. Only imagination can find the points that need to be tied together. Reasoning is nothing more than the act of drawing lines between. If you can't imagine, you can't reason. What I'm doing right now might be the way out there, but I'm sure isn't a mistake either. Only the power of imagination can pull clues out from the darkness. And then I can use the power of reasoning to tie those clues together. It was a lot like the process of searching out an enemy's weak spot and striking. It's okay if I'm way out there. Find a weak point first. Then we can think about how to strike. Right now is the time to find points we can tie together later.
To co, kończymy na dzisiaj?
No tak.
Ja jestem
Jak
za.
chcecie.
Dobra, no to kończymy w takim razie.
No
Łeb mnie
dobra.
napierdziela,
Dobra,
więc padałoby.
Ojej.
No to jasne.
Dobra, jest git. Zapisane. No dobra, no to dzięki.
Jej.
Hej,
Dzięki.
Pa, pa, pa.
Dobranoc.
Pa,
Dobranoc.
pa.
Dobranoc.
Bye bye.